Greetings, everyone. I am so excited to be in conversation today with my friend Sandy Humby and her amazing work with the path of the roses. Thank you for being here today, Sandy.
Oh, it's a delight. I mean, and what a day to choose.
Yes, on a powerful full moon.
Mm-mm.
Well, let me start by just reading your brief bio, and then we'll get into conversation about this profound work that you're doing. So, Sandy Humby is a multifaceted energy alchemist and a creative channel for the Rose Alchemy Rose Oracle for the Heart, which was first published in 2014 with a second edition in 2019. 10 years on now, she is birthing her new work with the Rose Dragons, bringing their powerful elemental and celestial words of wisdom to assist us in our shift of consciousness into a new earth. She's the visionary founder of Mandalas of Love and has channeled a new way of vibrational healing with the power of her beautiful roses through 9 magical rose mandalas of love. She's able to identify and transmute residual trauma held in hearts, homes, and the earth. Sandy has over 40 years of experience in the world of design, well-being, and metaphysics. She's trained in multiple energy healing modalities, and her focus has been on the reawakening and empowerment of the divine feminine and in creating beauty to uplift the soul's journey. Beautiful, Sandy. And before we get into this conversation, I just want to share that I have personally experienced your profound work, both in terms of your personal alchemy healing work and your amazing work in clearing spaces, clearing homes, clearing land. I just want to say that I had issues here of energies that were out of balance on this land in my home that I had been dealing with for years, trying different healing modalities, shamanic modalities, and nothing shifted it until I did the work with you. And your work was so sophisticated and multi-layered through working with the roses that the healing shift was immediately, palpably present. And I just so honor your gifts as a sensitive, as an empath, and amazing healer. But let's talk about your journey with these extraordinary roses and how you embarked on this.
Well, yeah, thank you, Heather. I mean, I have just followed the path. Never at any point have I visioned where this was going. I've always just followed what has lit me up. And not always meaning that there's a straight path to where I'm going. There have been detours along the way. And yeah, I mean, I spent 18 years as a couture wedding dress designer. So my journey has always been about beauty. I worked with silk and antique French textile. We made extraordinary dresses. I had an amazing team. But for me, it was about listening to the story. It was about listening to the story of the woman that came through my door. And somebody very wisely said to me, it was about researching the human dream, that those 18 years of really understanding the power of the heart and the frequency of the heart that is our attractor factor and what that brings into our lives through resonance. So when the women came to my door, I, sat down and I, started to vision their dream that they was telling. It was my question to them was always, how did you meet your beloved? So and everybody had a story. It was happenstance or a friend or invited them or whatever. So this path of love, this path of beauty, this path of the rose, because we're talking the 80s and the 90s, when I had my shops and my design studio, and they wanted roses. The women wanted roses on their dresses. And I mean, they were very theatrical dresses. And I came to realize that I probably had a very strong connection to the French court. And I may well have been a designer at the French court because of my love of silk, the fabric, and the time frame that I incarnated in to craft these dresses. But there was always a feeling there was something more, that I wasn't to be a frock maker for the rest of my life. And so again, life took me out on a journey. And I'd been curious about healing modalities going back into the early 90s. I had some challenges from a digestion point of view, as a sensitive, being bombarded with, you know, the foods and so on. So I'd sought out healing modalities, and my natural pathway beyond making the frocks was to explore doing one-to-one healing. I was a trained pranic healer by that point, pranic psychotherapist, and had started training in Hatha yoga. I'd spent 3 years at a philosophy school with Advaita training. Lots of different things had caught my attention. I was, you know, when the door opens, you're like a kid in the candy store, aren't you? You know, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I'm interested in crystals. Oh, actually, the last wedding dress collection I made was called The Threads of Life, and I took numerology of the bride and the groom, worked out their gifts, what the exchange was, what the coming together at a soul level was. So I was already in that zone. But I got curious about why some people heal and why some people don't.
Mm.
So I started offering one-to-one sessions, and some people would come back and we'd exponentially take them forward over, you know, 2 or 3 sessions, so that the body's mechanism for healing was activated enough for them to be well on the path. But there were others who came back and it would be Groundhog Day, and we'd start all over again. And I got really curious about why that was. And the common denominator obviously was the space that they'd come out of in the morning, or the relationship. So was it a sick building? Was it a toxic relationship? What was taking them back into a pattern that was obviously stronger than the shift that we'd made? So that then took me out on an exploration about the nature of space and how to work with the energies in spaces. And I met a woman who was creating some beautiful sort of like harmonizer units that you would douse the light grid of a property and put this little, almost like a patch, almost like a plaster in on that light grid point, and I could feel this wave of energy go through my body and out through my back heart chakra and through the property. So so that developed, and I deepened my understanding of the energy lines, vortexes, portals, with hundreds of consultations. I met and partnered with somebody who had some mastery in this too. So we used to travel and work and teach this particular development. So it was, really a development in the art and science of house whispering. We were cutting new ground, I think, is probably the way of describing it. The psychology of our spaces. And that meant that there was a richness to what I was experiencing. But I found that I became particularly adept at tuning in to earthbound spirits. And this became the piece that I I became most drawn to. And what I'd come to realize, of course, was that earthbound spirits, and these spirits are different to entity energies. Spirits are, have had a life and an experience like you and I, a consciousness like you and I. The entity energy is not created from the same field of frequency, but that it was always the heart wound that had created the stuckness for that soul fragment. And so that became my real curiosity about, well, what are these heart wounds that create this stuckness when someone is leaving the body, that a fragment of the soul will go back to where trauma occurred for some resolution. And at that time, I'd also been curious about this piece in the Egyptian pantheon where the heart is weighed against a feather. Yeah, and at the time of passing, our inner work ideally brings us to a place where our hearts are as light as feathers through the process of our lives. So lots of things started to drop in then, but there was one thing that kept on pulling me. On my wish list wall in my office, there were two places that I really wanted to go visit. One was the Alhambra in Granada in Spain, and the other was Roslin Chapel, just south of Edinburgh in Scotland. Neither of them had I been to. Neither of them really did I have an idea as to why. But there they were. and courtesy of the Icelandic ash cloud some years back, I had the opportunity to reroute some flights. And I ended up going to the Alhambra in the end of May in 2010. And I didn't know why, but I was so excited about being there. In fact, there's a picture of me stood in the archway in the entrance to the Alhambra. And I felt I looked like the cat that had got the cream. I felt like I'd come home. There was a familiarity with the frequency. And I did some research and I realized that I'd got a connection to a Sufi mystic called Ibn Arabi. And I had been a student of his in past lifetimes, and that I had some connection to the creation of the Alhambra. Nevertheless, I spent 2 days there in rapture and just loving the architecture and the rhythm of the script and the rhythm of the pattern in the buildings. And so I'd gone with my favorite camera, but it was the roses in the rose gardens that called me. And the rose gardens in the Alhambra are like rooms. They are small rooms that are connected by archways and waterways and fountains. And it is just beautiful. And I hadn't joined the dot even the fact that it was rose time. But the roses were there in abundance. And they were going, photograph me. No, photograph me. It was just a wonderful, wonderful trip. And I came back with a camera full of roses, loaded them up on my computer. Didn't think any more about it. It was just a fab trip, like you do. I was more interested in the architecture and the pictures I'd taken of the architecture, and really, I loved photography. And I woke up a couple of days later, and there's a voice that says, "We'd like you to put 11 of us together and work with us. We have come to heal the Magdalene wound. We have come to heal the wounded aspects of the feminine in both men and women, but that it's always the women that seek the healing first for their families, for their children, for their communities. And each and every woman incarnate on the planet at this point has at least one of the 5 wounds to love that she has contracted to clear through her genetic line. And that was the opening to this whole journey with the roses. So there was this preamble with the dresses and the healing and the call to the Alhambra. And I had no idea.
But you were so following your soul's journey. And what are those 5 wounds, Sandy?
5 wounds are abandonment that sits in the base chakra, the base sacral chakra, betrayal that sits in the solar plexus, denial that sits in the throat, judgment that sits on the 3rd eye, and separation that sits on the crown. But alongside those, they also offered the salve of self-love, self-value, self-esteem, of trust, of truth, of forgiveness, and surrender, which opens up the golden heart. And the golden heart says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and end of your search. And I hand you the golden key. So this is where the journey went.
I mean, this is extraordinary, Sandy. So in supporting that healing of the wounds of the sacred feminine, it's not only supporting each of us coming into wholeness, because we all have that sacred masculine, sacred feminine within us, but it's opening the healing of the collective consciousness.
Yeah. But it did take me a long time to realize that it was actually for me. None are so blind that those that have the complete set. So, it has been a wild ride. But what was even more fascinating was that they showed me, as I tuned into each of these 11 roses, once I'd got them all together, they showed me that they created a cross formation and they sat on the body. They actually sit, each one of those rose energies will sit on a chakra point on the body. Now, if I douse that chakra, it will show an orientation, a preference of orientation of masculine, feminine, clockwise or anti-clockwise. When I put the rose card on the body and redouse, the pendulum will spin both ways. And what I realized was that the rose was reminding the chakra of its perfected blueprint to balance masculine, feminine, like the Ida Pingala that runs up through the body, that crosses over at each of the chakra points. And whether we look at nodes on the body or whether we look at nodes on the land, there's a parallel. This is all, this is why I resonate with your work so much, this bringing into balance the masculine, feminine. For me, the rose path was never about just the feminine.
It's really about coming into wholeness.
Yes, absolutely. Because, what they're calling us to is the rose heart. And what's at the center of the rose heart is the Rosa Mystica. What's the Rosa Mystica? Well, it's the mystery of love. It is the mystery of life in its deepest form. So it's like as we do the work, we peel open the petals to reveal the golden heart of the rose. And this is the pathway. It's to be the rose. It's to be able to sit with this open heart, knowing that we've all been wounded in one way or another. And the more we can open and trust, those different aspects of ourselves. Once we are not holding shadow, there's a rose 5 in the set that sits on the solar plexus, and she speaks of vulnerability being our superpower. Yeah. When we can, well, she's not easily going to come to hand, but when we can come into the surrender to the story that we hold, then there is potential for healing. It is to be humble to the fact that we hold it all. And you know, there are deep lessons in working with that first 11 roses.
And it feels, Sandy, like it's clearing the layers of trauma, opening us to healing, to be more fully in alignment with our soul self, which then allows us to open to that universal love and higher consciousness. Because the rose also is the plant on the planet with the highest frequency. So it not only heals us, opens us more fully to love, but allows us to move into more expanded consciousness.
Absolutely. And interestingly, the oldest rose fossil on the planet is 30 million years old. And it was said that the rose came from Venus with the first star seeds.
Mm.
So, you know, it is a, she has history. She has history. And actually after the working for a period of time with that first set, because all I had was 11 roses, I then got the nudge to go to Roslin Chapel. You know, there was just, you know, in the preamble, today I said to you, know, that I get downloads in the shower, and sure enough, you know, there was this, you know, just book your ticket. You need to go to Roslin Chapel now. And it's there that the 3 master roses came in, that were the balancing of the right and left hand hemispheres of the brain, the masculine and the feminine, to illuminate the divine child or the golden flame. And actually in Roslin, there is the master mason's pillar and the apprentice's pillar. And in the middle, there is the journeyman's pillar, which is absolutely plain. The other 2 are very, very decorated. There's the journeyman's pillar, and actually in front of the altar in Roslin, there is a sweet spot, and that a celebrant with knowledge would have been able to harness both, and from that sweet spot, and also connect down into the solar disc, the spinning disc that is an energetic disc. That was one of the reasons I was so excited to go to Roslin, because I'd been interested about these 12 solar discs around the planet.
So it's really about tapping into that energy of source, 0 point energy, the energy of pure love.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that then brought me 3 more roses. So I then had 2 sets of roses, and was then invited to go to the States, come over to the States to teach it. So I had, there was a lovely lady, Renee Jensen, who was holding space for the roses in New Jersey and in New York. So I ended up sharing them at the Theosophical Society and the Open Center and the Meta Center and Namaste Bookstore and all sorts of places in New York, which was always a real adventure. And when I eventually was nudged to get the first book and set published in 2014, I was invited to speak to a small group at the United Nations on the Rose and the Path of Peace. And that was the launch, summer solstice 2014, for the Rose Oracle for the Heart, first edition. And, you know, every time, you know, it's been incremental. So I started with 11, then there were 3 from Roslin. And, you know, then there were another 11 that were the Rose Angels, that were the transformers for these 5 winds to love. And these are all holding a vertical. alignment. They're all about clearing the connection for us to be able to be a bridge to bring these higher keys and codes of light down through to the earth, to bring heaven on earth, really, to purify the vessel of our stories. And then there were a group that came through that were called the Rose Bagua, and that was about the first horizontal. What is your heartfelt expression in the world? What are you here to bring and share?
Your gifts and your embodiment.
Mm-hmm. And then the final set of that lot book comes back into the heart as to qualities of the activated and empowered heart field that were the Rose Ma, the mother of the rose. And so many of us are clearing down through the mother line. So that in itself was fascinating, because actually, if we put ourselves back in the womb of our mothers and connect our umbilical to the placenta, and do that again and again up through the line, so it's like Russian dolls, we can only go back to the Great Mother. And so all of the storyline that it's come down to us as individuals to hold and alchemize, because we're like alchemical pots, as I see it, is the distortion. And once we clear that, we have direct connection to Great Mother. And these are extraordinary times, aren't they, Heather?
So it's healing the personal wounds, but healing the ancestral wounds, so that
Absolutely.
we're healing from that shamanic perspective backwards and forwards.
Absolutely.
To open to oneness, to divine source.
Yes, absolutely. And I really got that the roses are a path of sacred homecoming. There is this pathway home to self, home to love, and I think more than anything else, perhaps these last 4 years, where we've been brought much more into focus into our homes, and perhaps opening up to an awareness that life isn't quite how we thought it was, and that I do really see that every full and new moon, this is an incremental pathway, isn't it? Where we get this nudge that is there something more that you can alchemize? Is there something more that you can release? Is there something more that you can bring into consciousness? That ultimately, I believe that there's an inner architecture of love. There is an inner architecture of light that we are being asked. It's a technology of light that we are invited to connect with. And that feels super powerful.
I talk a lot in my videos about how we're in this profound time of transformation to become beings of light, homo luminous ones. But to do that, we have to clear the distortions, the blocks, the wounds, to open into that energy of love and light. And what's profound about this healing through the roses is it's healing us, it's healing the space around us. And you also do a lot of healing of the earth, so that we're healing on all those levels to support this transition into higher consciousness and into love.
I mean, what I really saw in that process of doing so many consultations for clients in their homes, because this is like this inner temple, our space is our outer temple. Our home is our outer temple. And so whatever's going on in here will be outpictured, and whatever's going on out here will be impictured. And what I became really curious about was, because a home should wrap its arms around you, and you should feel safe, nourished, inspired, and energized to go back out into the world. So it should be a place where you can your energy field can unpack and you can recharge. And what I came to understand was, just like the women that came through my door that were speaking of a relationship, so our homes are a relationship. And when we can go and look at a dozen different houses, but we will usually, we can have the same amount of rooms and be in the same sort of location, but it's likely we will go into one and we will go, I could live here. This is it. We could even be outside and go, this is the one. But what is the attractor factor? What have we attracted? What is it? Ultimately, it's for our healing. But often we will find ourselves in spaces that will compromise us in some way, or be a challenge energetically. And it'll always be through relationship, health, or finances. These are the three key places where you can sense whether the energy of a place is off, or it's compromising your energy. And the other thing that's been very interesting for me, because beyond the first edition of the Rose Oracle, when I came to publish the second edition in 2019, I had two more sets of roses that came forward. One were called the Cosmic Roses, which expanded our field and our awareness to Earth Star and Soul Star, Gaia Gateway and Stellar Gateway. So expanded that verticality of our experience and our connection with the Earth and the cosmos. And the third set, the last set, were three roses that called themselves Heart Star. And they were the threefold flame of love, wisdom, and power that sit in this higher heart, this universal heart field. And so when we come to look at what our connection is with the land, a house has a heart, has an earth star as well, and a soul star. It has a consciousness, it has a beating heart, if it's being correctly honored and was built with consciousness. Sometimes I've ended up having to re-ensoul a property, or so where it's been demolished and the heart has moved off site, and I've needed to bring the heart back in, so the heart of the house is there. Often the couple will have divorced if the beating heart isn't there in the house. Anyway, I started to look more at the Earth Star energy, and I was fascinated through and actually the Earth Star in the set came to me from Sedona. I was teaching the Rose classes in Sedona some years ago, and the Earth Star Rose called me across a rose bed in the middle of a shopping mall in Sedona, and I had to look round and make sure nobody was watching me as I crept across the bed with my camera, because she wasn't going to let me not take a photograph. Anyway, the Earth Star as a center, as an energetic center, is our docking portal with the Earth and the energetic streams of consciousness in the Earth. And our relationship with the Earth Star of the place that we've chosen to live is either life-sustaining or life-diminishing.
Wow.
And I've learned over the years how to calibrate that. So I can get a sense of, because sometimes we can be somewhere for a certain length of time and then it doesn't feel right anymore, or somewhere else is calling, or it's like sometimes, well, there are some of us that move around a lot, and there are some people that stay very much in situ. And I have found over the years, with the people that I've spoken with that have moved around a lot, it's because they're needing to take their frequency field into certain places because of the alignment.
Mm,
And
makes sense.
it's about, again, that sensitivity to the energy field of the space, but also our relationship with the land. So it's not just the relationship with the space that creates optimum health, well-being, vitality, creativity, and that sense of being absolutely in the right place for life. There's a lot of different facets to that. And if we can get our places so that they are really supporting our energy and that we feel at home where we are, then we naturally recharge. We are naturally in flow. Our personal Earth star is energetically aligned, frequency aligned to the crystalline grids of the Earth, to the undulating. So if we go on to the dragon song lines, the dragon song lines of the Earth will communicate with us.
And it creates these spheres of healing then that emanate out. And I know, as happened when you healed the land and the space here, that you heal out a radius of 3 miles.
Yes.
So it's creating these healing energy fields that create a morphic resonance that help spread the healing in the collective consciousness and on the earth.
It's also a way too, beyond the personal work in a space, to be able to work with community.
Yes.
And for me, I don't do energy work in places unless not in a house or a building, unless I've been specifically asked to do that by the person that has the contract for the property, the energetic contract for the property. So I've found a beautiful way of working with my roses, and particularly over this last 4 years, where most of my work is now done remotely, by working with the client beyond the consult in the property, to create a physical mandala on the land with natural found items on the land. And mandalas have been in my life since I was a child. I mean, I loved spirograph as a child. It was my favorite toy in creating magical patterns, and obviously my interest in sacred geometry, because the sacred geometry of the rose is a whole different thing. But actually, the mandalas and the way that my work has developed alongside these mandalas has been to, as I say, have a client create a physical mandala on the land, which they then photograph and send to me. And I am able then to create a mandala with the roses. And the roses are pure love. So they have no other agenda other than to assist in this journey of sacred homecoming. So when we're talking about the spirit energies, the earthbound spirits, places where there may have been, indigenous loss and battles, and here in the UK we've got a lot of battlefields, because there's
trauma signatures.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just recently I was working on an amazing job on the Bolinas line, on the spine of Albion that runs right up through the UK. And it's these undulating dragon lines that create node points along the journey, and working to heal and release stuck souls that were caught within some of the awful things that have happened in the name of love, or the church, up through this particular area. And so what I do is I work with the Rose Dragons, which is this new group of energies that I'm working with, and I'm publishing the dragon set for solstice. So it's all very near right now. But the elemental rose dragons hold almost like a medicine wheel. So they hold a really stable anchor connected in with this mandala that the client has created on the land. And I can create a chimney of light that enables all of the earthbound spirits that are stuck through trauma, because earthbound spirits are only stuck through trauma. They don't get stuck through bliss. You know, to be able to move towards this chimney of light and release.
And be healed.
And so therefore, beyond the personal healing or the healing of the space, there is a release of the trauma field on Mother Earth's mantle. And this, I feel, takes it to a whole new level of how do we release the density? How do we assess Mother Earth in her own rising? By dealing with our own stuff, by clearing whatever may be residual in our own homes, because the memory field sits in the water. You know, this is, yeah, our walls would be dust if they didn't have water, moisture in them. And that's why we can go into a room and go, this feels really lovely. Or we can go into a room and go, get me out.
Yeah.
And
we're so much water. So
yes.
And water holds the consciousness, holds the memories.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you show that diagram, Sandy, of how this supports the healing into wholeness and how the rose dragons hold that space?
This one?
Yes.
Yes. Just trying to see if I can get it so that it's not quite as dark. So this is this place of the masculine and the feminine, and where the healing of the masculine and feminine is, so that third energy is birthed in the Vesica. And for me, this is absolutely connected to the rose work. The roses, if we place ourselves in this field here, then the verticality of the line comes up to the soul star and down to the earth star. And this really brings us into, well, connection with ether. So you can see with the elemental energies, we've got earth and water, which sit in the Pingala current, and the air and the fire that sit in the Ida. So we are in a real sense of this actually it's the other way around, sorry, this is the Ida and the Pingala, but the Shishamna is this central column that connects the earth star with the soul star. And this, when we clear the field, enables us to have this pure sense of, I mean, this for me is the divine child. This is this purity and this connection direct with the zero field. It's absolutely, yeah. And this is what I think all of our work is. It's about the healing of the polarities into unity, so that we can call on either of the qualities, but we come into a sense of balance and a sense of unity within ourselves.
And what's extraordinary is, having experienced this healing work directly with you, is that you create these mandalas, and I'd love to show a few images of them, that are so holding that energy of source, of healing, of coming into wholeness, and supporting the healing of the trauma, healing what's been distorted. But you also use these rose cards with dowsing as a form of divination to give specific, I mean, you gave such specific insights and messages about what was needing to be healed, and then how these different rose energies could come into play in terms of supporting that healing.
Yeah. It's been an extraordinary path. The original Rose Oracle developed from sort of 5 levels to 7 levels of its content when I published in 2019. And then I was guided to move 2 hours west into the mystical lands of Avalon, and into a connection with an energy center here called Burrow Mump, which again is a node point on the Michael Mary line, actually, that runs all the way up from the southern tip of Cornwall right the way across to the east coast here in the UK. And these node points, are crossings of the masculine feminine lines, just in the same way of up through the spine of Albion, just as the same way of moving up through the body, that our chakras are like node points on the body as opposed to on Mother Earth's body. And I hadn't long been here and got very strongly guided to go to Burrow Mump. And actually I sat at the Mump and I could hear a hum in the land. And I went into the derelict chapel at the top of Burrow Mump and hummed the note I could hear. And the tower pulsed. And I went off note and it stopped, and I went back on note and it pulsed. And that led, as these things do, that led to me standing in the center of the church there and hearing a voice that said, "We are the elemental rose dragons, and we have come to bring you connection from the 5D heart of Gaia." And there are 5 of us: earth, air, fire, and water, and ether. And we are unified in our fields. We are not polarized masculine, feminine, but in the body, we will take a particular stream of energy as we connect with you and bring balance to raise a bioplasmic field of light as you connect with us. And they said, and beyond us, there are another 13 that want to come together, that are the celestial rose dragons, and they sit in a circle around the crown, and with a central connection, 0-point field that is a pure iridescent stream of God consciousness. Doesn't everybody have that kind of conversation? In the middle of the landscape. But clearly that was the reason I was brought 2 hours west, away from family and friends, into glorious isolation to commune with these particular energies. So that's the piece that I'm working on now, working with the elements, helping bring them to a place where they can offer their wisdom to help us really understand that this vessel is of the earth. Every molecule of this vessel is of the earth. It arises from the earth and it will return to the earth. And it's a vessel for this journey. It's a vessel for consciousness. And
but you're weaving earth and sky, heaven and earth, how we then hold that bridge, that embodiment of being stardust, but here on the earth. And again, that integration, reweaving of the sacred feminine, sacred masculine, but now at a much higher level. So this is the new Mandalas of Love deck that you're putting out at the solstice, and this new training that you're doing. Absolutely.
So the elemental rose dragons and the celestial rose dragons have created a 9-level pathway. And as ever with me, I'm in the shower and I hear, and we are mandalas of love. And I came out and got a piece of paper and a pencil, and I drew these 9 circles. I knew exactly what they were. So it's the 7 levels of the original oracle, plus the elemental rose dragons and the celestial rose dragons. And they showed me very quickly that they'd created almost like 9 rose windows. They're 9 rose windows of soul consciousness. And so by working with each of these different windows into our inner landscape, what they will show me through dowsing, and I've been dowsing since '96, so it's been a long path for me. They will show me exactly which of these rose frequencies want to come together to create a unique mandala for the person or for the land or for the home that I can use to tell a story, to elicit what's going on for the client, so that it's active in the field. And then I can unwind and release the story, and then wind back in the pure love that is at the heart of the rose. So this 9 mandalas of love, I'm offering the first ever 6-month journey with these mandalas of love as a complete process. And I think, as I said to you, but when we spoke, it feels to me like it's the whole of my soul's journey, and my learning has come together in this piece of work, whereby the new Rose Dragon cards, this new Rose Dragon set that publish at Solstice, complete the 9 parts to the journey. And interestingly, the geometry on the back of the cards is a 9-spin golden mean heart geometry. So there probably always was 9 levels that completes the whole thing. But there are extraordinary stories that have come from the working on the land, and the working with client spaces, and clearing soul stories, that have needed to be resolved, that have come down through either our own incarnational storyline or the generational stories. And mandalas of love are with us all the time, because our birth families are mandalas of love that we learn with, and we create mandalas of love with our family frequency. And ultimately, of course, it's the heart. It's the rose heart.
And those 9 levels, from my experience working with you, tap into every aspect of life.
Yeah.
So that they're attuning to wherever the imbalance is, the disharmony is, to clear that and then reactivate this harmony, this frequency of love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me show images of some of the mandalas. Cute.
So this is the new these are the new Rose Dragon energies, and they're quite different to the original Rose Oracle in the fact that they're square. They wanted to come in square format, so they've got a very different purpose in the way that they hold themselves. So the outer ones are connected to earth, air, fire, and water, and ether is sitting underneath the rose that's in the center here. And then this circle of 12 are all the qualities of the activated sovereign crown. And what's been fascinating for me is that as I've got older, I've been very interested in the connection between crone and crown, and this sense of sovereign self, and this illumination that occurs as we really step on our true journey. And so each one of these roses in the center forming the circle. And I do think there's an interesting piece about circle squared that again, bringing heaven on earth, circle being the symbology for heaven and the square being the symbology for earth. That this, Mary Magdalene, she spoke of us being 100% physical, really here, 100% physical, and yet 100% spiritual. And that I've learned over the years that ascension is in fact a descension. We have to be really embodied. And these qualities that these rose dragons and the celestial rose dragons invite us to is to be fully connected to the earth, fully embodied and here on the earth, and yet dancing in the stars.
And it's an extraordinary medicine wheel as well. And let me pull up the next one here.
Yeah, it's so interesting. What fascinates me is there's such a different energy. Same cards, different placement, but worked as a medicine wheel. And, you know, we've got qualities of courage, of kindness, of compassion, of trust, of strength, purity, humility, devotion, truth, mercy, patience, and love. And many years ago, I had a reading by a lady called Leela Beck, who must have been in her 80s then, and it's probably 25 years ago. But she spoke about these color rays on the crown, and she was clairvoyant. She could see the color rays on the crown. And that has always fascinated me. And also the fact that there was this whole piece of Mother Mary and this halo or this crown of 12 stars. And the more I researched it, I found myself tracking back into Revelation. Interestingly, Revelation 12:1, 12 around the one, that spoke of a woman clothed by the sun, standing with the foot on the moon and with a crown of 12 stars. And, you know, this is how the celestial rose dragons revealed themselves. You know, each step of the way, I have only just followed what they asked of me. And this is, you know, the path of the rose, the path of beauty, truth, and love. That's been my journey.
And this is then this culmination of the mandalas of love that incorporate all of this wisdom, all of this healing energy and expansion into higher consciousness and love. Yes.
Yes, it is this sacred pathway home. And what I'm hoping to do is through the 6-month course to be able to train people. It's a certificated course, and I'm hoping to train people to be able to do this for themselves. So it's a pathway initially of learning what all of these different energies are and how to work with them and how to work in that 6 months to refine and align one's own field, and then to be able to start to work it and be able to work with it for others. And I've had a small beta group that has gone through, and it's really interesting because everybody's got their different modalities that they're weaving this into. And, you know, whether you're working it with bowing, whether you're working it with yoga practice, whether, you know, whatever the practice is, the roses are just pure love. They've got no other agenda, just to way show us to where healing might be needed, or a refinement might be needed, or a rebalancing might be needed. That ultimately allows us to be an ever clearer conduit. And that, of course, helps us with the solar flares and the rest of the energies that we're dealing with and the astrology that we're dealing with, that is creating such a field of transformation for us. And the clearer we are, the more graceful that process is. And the more we heal and open to that love energy and light energy, the more that we support the healing of the collective consciousness and align with the earth in her ascension process. And how exquisite it is, Sandy, that this is coming through the roses that model for us
how to be fully embodied in beauty, in full presence here, holding this connection to source and love and light.
Yeah. And you know, for years, Heather, I wanted a healing center. You know, I thought I should open a healing center. And I've actually come to realize that we as individuals that work within the healing arts are healing centers, and we can transform someone's life in the corner shop just by a kind word, a smile, or a gentle touch. You know, it becomes really simple. But actually, also, I have found that those of us in the healing arts often that, you know, we're so busy sorting things out for other people that actually the joy of being able to work with these and work for ourselves and to look into our own process is also a joy, because you know, the finer we can become in our own work, that in my experience, the harder it is to find an aligned practitioner that we can unpack, because we're all work in progress.
Yeah. But the roses can meet us there.
The roses can meet us there.
Deep as we need to go.
Yep. Yeah. They I mean, how blessed am I that I have been surrounded by this level of beauty for and also, you know, the joy for me too in the fact that they have communicated through the lens of my camera, and that there are 70 roses now. And I think when you add you know, yourself and source, you get to this magical number of 72, which feels to be a very potent number for us at this point in our evolutionary cycle. So, you know,
It's a sacred number and associated with the whole processional cycle and this larger shift in consciousness that we're in. Thank you for the extraordinary work that you're doing, Sandy, for the way in which you've been open to the call of the roses and your own soul's purpose and journey to be a vehicle to bring this through.
I think they've opened me to it, to be honest. You know, again, as I said, you know, I don't know anyone who's walking the true path of the rose that hasn't had an interesting journey that's been colourful and challenging, because they, you know, they are both graceful and strong in their calling, and these times, I again, you know, that the idea of the lighthouse has come to me many times, and this sense of being foundated, that is, I'm all air and water, so actually foundating is an interesting thing for me. And needing to light a fire. But this whole thing of, you know, being on steady ground, having steady ground, and illuminated from within to shine a light for others on tricky passage. That also sits very well for me, but it's an inside job, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being such a healer, such a lighthouse, such a way shower in this intense time. And I encourage all of you, explore Sandy's work, these amazingly powerful healing cards and her upcoming course. And I'll list all of that below.
Thank you, Heather.
Well, blessings to you.
Thank you, Heather.
Blessings to all of you.